emergency for the first time in about...
This is Jim, and
Receiving this message. We are Ken Jennings and John Roderick. We speak to you from our present, which we can only assume is your distant past, the turbulent time that was the early 21st century.
Fearing the great cataclysm that will surely befall our civilization, we began this monumental reference of strange and obscure human knowledge. These recordings represent our attempt to compile and preserve wonders and esoterica that would otherwise be lost.
So whether you're listening from an advanced civilization or have just reinvented the technology to decrypt our transmissions, this is our legacy to you.
This is our time capsule. This is the Omnibus.
You have accessed entry 1029.AC1616, certificate number 27324, Ramtha.
Well, if I have an immortal gene, how come I'm not immortal? Why in the is it still there? You can edit that out if you wish. Gotcha. Or you can leave it in according to the maturity of the audience. I'm certain I have said nothing new under the sun, Horatio.
Ramtha.
Ramtha. Am I saying that right?
Yes. Well, how would the Australians say it?
Hard to say. Upside down. Athmar.
Ramtha.
Ramtha. It's Ramtha, feller. They don't say feller. What do
they don't.
What do they? Bloke.
Bloke.
Yeah.
We're a science-based podcast.
100%. I mean, without science, how would we even get it onto computers?
Right, let alone onto platinum discs.
If you're not a science-based podcast, how are you actually releasing it? Are you just like thinking about the boring conversation really hard?
Well, see, now you're getting at the heart of the question here, because there's science and then there's science. Am I right?
What would you say is the difference between science and science?
Well, usually you do the math podcasts. Not because you know math any better than I do, but because you are so much better at BSing about math than I am.
What? Is this going to be a math show? I didn't see that coming.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a math show because it involves quite a bit of, at least in the introductory stages, quite a bit of quantum math.
Wow.
Yeah.
Buckle yourselves in, everybody. John's doing quantum math.
You feel pretty strongly about quantum math, right? You feel like,
oh boy.
I mean, right?
You've seen the t-shirts I have, right?
Well, quantum theory, introduced as all of our listeners know, surely the listeners who are listening to the show through a quantum engine, quantum math introduced a lot of confusion into physics and math.
A lot of the ground rules seem to no longer apply at certain very small scales.
Right. And a lot of the mathematicians and scientists that were in the early vanguard of quantum theory
went mad.
They were also, I think, confused or intrigued by the implications of their own study and their own findings. And a lot of them dabbled in kind of metaphysical explanations or the suggestion that quantum theory reverberated outside of mathematics. This is part of a unified theory of the universe that it almost tread into the world of comparative religion.
Right. It seems to have what, a spiritual import?
Yeah, all of the Schrodinger, Heisenberg, Einstein, they all were inspired by the kind of the uncertainty of quantum theory, and also the sense that observation changed the nature of the physics. That it might. There were suggestions that each of them in their way kind of explored, is this is there evidence for this other places? Does this suggest something spiritual? Does it suggest something metaphysical?
Is God a superstring?
Right. Did the Hindus know something? Did the Buddhists know something that, because there's a lot of overlap.
I guess in the time period, that would have been a very, Eastern religion is first making its way to Western intellectuals.
Right. And Eastern religion, has all this kind of appealing in uncertainty. It isn't.
A Zen koan is both true and not true at the same time. You can see how that would have resonances with the quantum realm.
And in a lot of cases, it was the, Eastern religions, the ideas being translated into English or into Western languages, word choice ended up overlap. In a lot of cases, it was just a sort of accident of language that the uncertainty, the blessed uncertainty implied in a religious belief and the mathematical uncertainty would share some commonality in language, and so it would appear to indicate, or you could mistake that for meaning, or you could mistake that for evidence that the religion foresaw the ambiguity in the math.
What are we talking about here? Just the general sense that the building blocks of the universe are not what we thought they were, then opens that up to all kinds of interpretations as to what the meaning of life might be. The universe is not what we think it is.
Well, primarily what the form it took, and then the way that form morphed into what we now think of as present day New Age, was the idea that the observer played a role in determining the nature of reality. Like within quantum theory, it's the observer plays a role.
Sure. And the act of actually seeing a certain kind of microscopic reaction changes the nature of it.
Changes its outcome.
Right. A photon is a wave or a particle, depending on how you look at it.
And I think the early descriptions of it, it wasn't clear, and it was only later kind of, and it still isn't clear, whether the observer is a consciousness or needs to be a consciousness. When the mathematics describes an observer, it isn't necessarily implied that observer is a person.
If I make my Roomba release the radioactive isotope that kills Schrodinger's cat, when does the waveform collapse?
Yeah, it's
when the Roomba does it, or when I open the box.
And this is still, there are people on both sides of this issue, or on all sides of it. The multiplicity, an infinite number of sides of this issue. The question of whether or not an observer is an observer in scare quotes or an observer, but in the early years of trying to discern exactly what an observer was, who an observer was. If you explode that thinking,
it does privilege consciousness in a way that our mechanistic idea of neurology does not.
It does, and it suggests that you, as the observer, have the power to make or remake reality. Because if your participation in the constituency of the elements, if you're a necessary part of it.
If I can make light a wave or a particle, what can't I do?
What can't I do? That's right.
So this would sell 1 million self-help books, obviously.
And it ultimately became the groundwork, or the foundation of what we think of now as quantum philosophy, and what quantum energy or quantum a misreading or a selective reading,
simplification, I guess,
of quantum thinking is behind Deepak Chopra. It's
that's interesting. I never would have made that link.
Yeah,
I would have thought that those appeal to people who have little to no interest in particle physics.
No, the beauty of contemporary New Age is that it has so much backstory that's related to this untethering of mathematics and physics from the world of test tubes into the world of theoretical math, and then, like anything in our modern culture that initially felt like a liberation, and in that I include relativity, social relativity. Like if everyone is capable of creating their own reality, and if your truth and my truth are on equal footing, initially that feels like kind of a liberation from a imposed monolithic culture or truth.
It's validating.
But then it can also very quickly be misused to make, false equivalencies and ultimately like as many truths as there are people in the world.
So it's not uncommon for these New Age movements to know how to leverage the vocabulary of 20th century scientific revolution. Not
only just leverage the vocabulary, but in fact enlist in the 1960s enlist actual physicists in kind of surveying documents and making assessments of the kind of this wiggle space. So in 1975, a book called The Tao of Physics was published to great acclaim, an amazingly popular book, actually written by a physicist, Fritjof Capra. And Capra actually took the manuscript to Heisenberg, read it to him, explained his thinking, and got Heisenberg to kind of sign off on the physics behind it.
Do you think the book changed when Heisenberg looked at it?
Interesting.
That's what I'd worry about if I sent him a review copy.
I feel like the book changes when any of us look at it.
Isn't that true?
Yeah.
You can't walk through the same river twice,
But this popularization of quantum mechanics, it's taken a myriad of forms because everybody's trying to grok it, right? I mean, any lay mathematician or a person with an interest in physics is trying to understand.
It lends currency to whatever your beliefs are. If the current scientific secret of the universe has relevancy to it, or supports it.
But it really set off it was the instigating charge behind the idea ultimately that you could make your own reality, that your participation in reality was shaping. And from that, all of the kind of New Age doctrines that your health is determined by your attitude, that you can manifest things in your own life or future, the power of positive thinking, all of these have a quantum underpinning.
It all seems very suspicious to me. It seems adjacent to the idea that, people deserve all the bad things that happen to them. Because, if something good hasn't manifested itself in my life, well, clearly I must have just been deficient in thinking about it enough. Why haven't I been thinking about winning the lottery enough?
Well, and that is some of, a lot of the overlap, as you're saying, the way Eastern religion was kind of like beginning to permeate Western culture and thinking in the 1960s. There was all this karmic overlap. Is karma just a way of describing quantum uncertainty?
The funny thing is all this is very foreign to actual practitioners of Eastern religion. They would be surprised at the idea like self-help is kind of antithetical to a lot of these religions, which really are all about just kind of embracing the universe as it arrives.
But again, it's often a translation problem. Because as you take these ideas and translate them through a couple of different languages,
it's a game of telephone.
Yeah, and now you're using language that's appropriated, reappropriated, sent back, and you're trying to get confirmation.
Some of it may actually be malicious too. You see the way Judeo-Christian teachings can be leveraged by many different groups to kind of suspect ends today. It's if you can twist scripture to support your lifestyle or your ideology, you'll do it.
I think it's very common and I think tempting for people like us who actually know all the facts.
I have them on my computer in front of me right now.
To, naturally be suspicious of the whole movement as one that is, if not malicious, then is a for-profit enterprise. Mm-hmm. But you can see in both the struggle to understand what is kind of a very difficult set of ideas, even for people who work in pure math to understand and describe, and this with the powerful admixture of all these new religions and new ideas and a kind of cultural movement toward identity and a belief that we were in a post-religious world, that a lot of people of goodwill and good faith could get swept up in this kind of unified theory, not just a unified theory of physics, of quarks, but a unified theory of life.
It turned out there's a reason why humans on 5 or 6 different continents all evolved religious principles, in many cases kind of similar ones, or at least similar bedrock ones, and then you can't just take that away from people. They need something else or something similar.
And there was a lot of hope, I think, and a profound hope that these that this was reciprocal, that you could, with enough people gathered together in symbiotic prayer, that you could actually end war, change the nature of the world.
It's empowering for counterculture, for young counterculture types.
Right.
If we just sing the right song, if we just sing Imagine, we can end the pandemic.
Yeah, we're going to vibrate the spheres at a certain amplitude and remake some of the or repair some of the broken fibers.
It seems to be related to just the complexification of the modernity, where it seems like many of the old remedies also don't work. So you might need a new one, like what if everyone can pray to the snake god at the same time? And also, what if we now can convert the scientists, these bomb makers, right? I mean, a lot of these same scientists were part of a Manhattan Project world. They're quoting the Bhagavad Gita as they're blowing stuff up,
right? And a lot of them had the scientists themselves, are what we think of as those mid-20th century giants. They had a tremendous conflict and interest in Eastern religion, but by the late 60s, this had kind of fragmented into, already the protoplasm, the ectoplasm, if you will, to harken back to the 19th century version of this sort of universe of mediums.
Or the 80s version. You could be talking about Slimer.
Well, and when we'll get to that, because that's all part of the story.
We're going to get to Slimer?
We're going to, well, you can reintroduce Slimer into the conversation.
You can always reintroduce Slimer. He's always welcome.
But in casting about, once you introduce the idea that your thoughts, your participation changes the nature of reality, you quickly enter into a boundless world where anything is possible. And in fact, that's a catchphrase, right? Anything is possible.
That's what people like about it.
It's what people like. And so it does attract a lot of culpable people, and also a lot of scam artists, and all the people in the middle who, there are a lot of charlatans, but then also a lot of people that are having authentic religious experience.
And it's a continuum. It's not like there's two kinds of people. Like if you ask people in any religion, hey, are you one of the ones on the take, or are you one of the I was about to say chickens, but that's not the word for somebody who's fallen for a con. Do you have carny slang for somebody who's
they're
a mark, I guess?
A mark, right? A cuck. That's what you're looking for.
I don't think they say cuck. But that's just not how religion works. Like everybody thinks they're acting in good faith. It's just a matter of how much that happens to be reinforcing your bottom line, or your own interests, or your own insecurities, or there's lots of reasons why people fall back on belief.
Yeah, there are, but they're not always just personal, right? People are often looking for a greater purpose, right? A feeling of connectedness, like the other power of religion, right? Which is civilization building. One of the first iterations of this particular kind of, I guess what you would call a new medium, or a metaphysician that connects with the greater unseen world.
By medium, do you mean an actual medium? Or like,
do you mean like a medium, like something in a test tube, or
no? I mean like a person running a seance. Or did you mean the singular of media?
No,
it would be funny if the new media here were actually more than one medium.
The new media here are more than one medium, and the first one to kind of set this new version of the seance. The contact with other worlds,
the Victorian era spiritualists.
Yeah, the spiritualists, and the spiritualist church is still 100 different spiritualist churches in the United States. But spiritualism in the 19th century was mostly interested in contacting the recently dead.
Yes.
Your lost child. There wasn't a ton of contact with Egyptian pharaohs within the spiritualist movement. It was much more.
That's why it failed.
That's right. They weren't reaching far back enough.
Everybody was just like, where did you bury the municipal bonds? And nobody had questions about Cleopatra.
In the early 1960s, a woman by the name of Jane Roberts, who had a difficult childhood. She was a very intelligent woman who was living in upstate New York, where so many of these things seem to begin.
We keep coming back to that.
Upstate New York, there really is something in the water.
But none of them have challenged the Mormons, I got to say. Still the most successful sect of upstate New York.
That's right. Well, the secret is get out of upstate New York, right? The Mormons had the right idea.
The Oneida people should have left.
They started those wagon trains, and everybody else is stuck there.
If there had been Oneida pioneers, just think how different the world would be. You'd have silverware missionaries knocking on your door.
That's right. Oh my God. So much better. I only have 5 forks.
That's what they would ask. Yeah. Sir, do you have a full set of...
How many forks do you have? I have like 30 spoons and 5 forks. And I run out of forks. Every week I run out of forks.
Would you like a short message about how you can be with your dinnerware forever?
So Jane Roberts was sitting with her husband, and they were playing with a Ouija board, which was very much in the fashion of the time. A kind of a parlor game.
Yeah, it had a lot of broad acceptance. Like Parker Brothers started making Ouija boards or something. It was really just a thing you'd have, a plastic thing you'd have in the American game closet.
And they were, kind of goofing around and having a good time with it. And she and her husband Walt, were both very secular thinkers. I think she'd grown up religious, but she'd become a kind of, mid-century science-based writer. She was a poet and a writer, and what we would think of as a very sensible person,
educated, sophisticated.
That's right. She sat down to write some poetry. I guess this is pre Ouija board. She was just having a normal day, and suddenly, pow! Just a lightning bolt hit her, and she was overwhelmed with kind of all these new messages. This enormous presence in her mind that she started to collect because she's a writer. She's literally sitting there at the typewriter. She starts to put the messages down on a piece of paper. She said it was like a feeling that her life up until that point, all of physical reality just was a piece of tissue paper, and this whole new reality rushed in, just tearing apart the fabric of, and it wasn't an unpleasant experience. And she felt like she was taking dictation.
This is exactly what happened to the automatic writer at the heart of the Chicago UFO cult of the 50s that we were looking at earlier.
That's right.
She suddenly felt like she had a flood of information coming from beyond herself.
And really, it's a similar time period, right? Well, the Chicago writer was
early 50s,
mid
50s.
So this is early 60s. She began to write all this down, and it was kind of quickly revealed that it was coming through a male personality who
the thoughts are coming. She feels like someone is talking to her.
Someone is talking to her. It's a male, and ultimately sort of revealed to be a person by the name of Seth. And Seth has chosen her as the portal for his great wisdom, and the experience, and it's a very literate hodgepodge of comparative religion and metaphysics, and a lot of sort of the loosey-goosey quantum thinking.
Oh, Seth has thoughts about the universe.
Seth has got a lot of thoughts about the universe. And she, to her credit, maintained a certain amount of skepticism about what Seth was. She didn't sit on a giant cushion and use a fake French accent to channel Seth.
She's also like, what's going on here? Because that is what I would think if a mysterious male voice began to reveal truths to me.
Well, I mean, you started a podcast with him.
Well, I mean, it's very easy to. Have you ever been in this situation, just as a creative person, of kind of feeling like you had a flow of ideas coming from outside yourself? You didn't start a religion about it because you were aware, well, this is an untapped part of me.
Yeah, or I mean, I think every songwriter has the experience at some point or another of feeling like a song arrives fully formed, or a song arrives where you basically are just taking dictation, and you get to the end and you go, wow, if I just wrote one of my best songs in 10 minutes, why am I not able to do that all the time? But it's never felt to me like I was seized by someone named Seth.
It's very specific. And it's certainly the fact that you're literally hearing voices makes me think about the kind of diagnosis that you would give to somebody who, I mean, these things must be schizophrenia adjacent.
Well, you wonder, in the case of the unconscious mind, in the case of, and we typically are very skeptical on this program, but I feel
assuming Seth doesn't exist.
Yeah, through the rest of this episode, I'm going to keep a healthy skepticism, but also some optimism about whether or not Seth really did appear. In Jane's mind.
That's one possibility.
That's one possibility. I think that the schizophrenia also is a spectrum.
Sure,
and you don't get the sense that Seth was telling Jane Roberts to leave the burner on and or to wear funny clothes. He was he had a lot of thoughts about ESP and clairvoyance. I mean, it was a lot of this. I
wonder if that's stuff she was already interested in or not.
It doesn't seem so.
That would be very suggestive if suddenly he's bringing to her new interests. That's something that your unconscious mind probably wouldn't do.
She had a very difficult, impoverished childhood with a lot of religion in it, kind of ever shifting religion, Catholicism, an abusive mother. So she had made it through all of that and was a healthy, well-adjusted young woman at the time that this all began to happen. So who knows? I mean, whenever someone has an extreme experience, we're always very quick to look back at their childhood and try to, assign
sure here's the trauma that,
here's
that
where
produced
it
Seth.
But she did not really use Seth and her channeling of Seth as a way of becoming a cult leader or really in a lot of ways even profiting. Like she would give seminars for free over the course of the rest of her life. She lived into the 80s. She had, she had sessions for thousands of people. I mean, in small groups.
I would call them Sethtions. Do you think that would
She
help?
had sessions.
Hard to say, but fun to put on a flyer.
Seth did give her advice. Like at one point, he suggested a new arrangement for their living room furniture.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Well, that's very helpful.
But she dictated, or she wrote and published many, many volumes of Seth's wisdom.
To the Victorians, he would have been a dead person speaking to her. Is there any sense of what Seth's identity is, or is he just an astral being of unspecified origin?
Seth answered this question.
That's one of the first things I would ask him, even before he started telling me my chairs are set up wrong.
Seth described himself as an energy personality essence, no longer focused in physical matter.
It does kind of imply I'm a dead person, but it uses kind of a sciencey sounding language to get it across.
There's a thing in kind of all religion where the prophet or the Godhead eventually just sort of either ascends on the back of a human-faced horse or up out from behind a rock,
giant swan,
or just diffuses into pure matter, pure energy. And so Seth at some point just became pure energy, and he didn't have as far as I know, didn't like break down a whole backstory where he was a shepherd boy and eventually like showed up in this suburban New York drawing room.
It's better to be vague, maybe.
But she published many, many books and never claimed authorship. She just claimed to be to transcribe them, and they were all credited to Seth. Now, I'm sure when the publisher sent out the royalty checks, the royalty checks probably said Seth in care of.
You can't send a check to an energy personality essence. Like they don't have an account.
But she did not seem to be self-aggrandizing. But this was an era, right, where this was the whole universe we've described many, many times of the late 60s, early 70s, where really anything could happen decade. And you cannot help but feel that Seth inspired subsequent experiences and a revitalization of the sort of channeling medium culture of the 19th century, but now focused not on your dead next door neighbor or someone who's clopping a shoe 3 times like a horse to answer questions. Although
that is a good way to answer questions.
Ken, how far are you from finishing next week's show?
Let's listen. Looks like I'm 3 hours away.
Oh, that's pretty exciting. So that brings us to the origin story of today's featured today's featured ectoplasmic space friend.
You get 2 media for the price of 1.
Let's set the Wayback Machine back to the immediate aftermath of World War II. What we can, I think, all agree is actual mid-century United States America.
It's core Eisenhower America.
This is core Eisenhower America, and it is in our story starts in a place no less magical than Roswell, New Mexico.
Well,
Roswell, New Mexico in 1946. So a full year before.
Isn't that right around the alien autopsy?
Yeah, a year before the UFO arrives in the form of a weather balloon in Roswell.
Wink, wink.
So Judy Hampton, born in Roswell in 46. She was, born into a large family and not a wealthy family, and she lived a kind of typical sort of boomer life of searching, and she had a couple of kids with her first husband, who was an alcoholic. She tried to be a business person. She went to business school, dropped out. She dabbled in cable TV. She, as
I did that during college too.
As is true of a lot of people, when they don't know what to do with their lives, she moved to Tacoma.
Oh, that's always a mistake.
Yeah, and at some point along the way, in the mid '70s, there was one of these sort of new age fads was the idea, and I think you probably remember this from watching Time Life television shows, the idea that that the pyramids, the shape of the pyramid, actually is an energy channeling.
Yes. Full of power, that geometry.
That's right. And Pyramid Power was actually a book, and then a fad. And I think there are still people in New Mexico who are sleeping under giant copper pyramids as a way of improving their health.
I don't think it's going to work.
Make them feel sexy.
The main thing about the pyramids is not that they're triangles; it's that they're huge. If Napoleon had seen a bunch of little triangles, he wouldn't be like, Sutalor! Like, if you're just making little pyramids, whatever the power is, I think you're not getting it.
Well, it's there's a whole school of thought, Ken, called pyramidology, which is because then I don't hold with it. As we started to realize that there were all these Mesoamerican pyramids and
big
Southeast Asian pyramids, Andean pyramids. That they're, again, as part of this like universal theory world of thinking, all the pyramids can't just have been, they're not all pyramids for no reason.
Isn't it just because it's much harder to build things that are wider on top? If you're building something, it's always easier for it to get narrower as you go up.
I mean, generally, I find that if you take anything and drop it on the ground through a single aperture, it will form a pyramid. Except for water. Water won't do it, but even maple syrup will.
And if you drop something that's got a wide end and a narrow end, it will fall on the wide end. That's just how nature wants to be pointy on top.
But nature does want to be pointy on top. We're back to the Grand Tetons. Anyway, J.Z. Knight was, Judith Hampton, who had over the course of her life, she married, I think, 5 times at least. She may have had subsequent marriages from the 5th one where she became J.Z. Knight.
Oh, I see. Knight is a married name.
Knight is a married name. She and her husband at the time, at mid-70s, were playing with Pyramid Power, and they had built a lot of little pyramids in their home, little paper pyramids.
Can't hurt, I guess.
Yeah, little pyramids
unless
out
you
of
fall on them,
straws,
and poke yourself,
or kind of like you would do in a 100 level architecture class, just building pyramids out of Elmer's glue and toothpicks,
or making them out of drinking straws for your egg drop.
Mm-hmm. For your egg drop, thank you.
That's the real pyramid power. It keeps the egg from breaking when you toss it off the gym.
And so there were a bunch of pyramids lying around on the kitchen table, and the next morning, Judy's goofing around, and she picks up one of the pyramids that they'd built and puts it on her head like a hat.
Whoa.
Crazy pyramid hat.
Just a sudden impulse. She seems like a fun, wacky gal.
She's a nut, and she put on this nutty hat. And again, like the fabric of the universe, as though it were just tissue paper, a mad rush of new information poured in. But in this case, the new entity announced themselves right away as Ramtha. Hello, I am Ramtha.
It's polite, not like Seth.
Or in Ramtha's case, Ramtha speaks with a little bit of an accent,
Has Ramtha been talking to you as well?
Well, no, but I've watched some of Ramtha's talks, and Ramtha talks with a little bit of I'm not going to say like Apu from The Simpsons, but close.
A little Eastern,
a little bit of from the
Vague.
Raj. And
if you want to try it, I will not cancel you because you're doing an impression of somebody
I'm doing an impression of Ramtha. I think you can all imagine, but also anyone listening to this show probably has access to media and the ability to go listen to Ramtha.
You assume that the future
himself.
Ramtha is now maybe the state religion of future Earth.
Maybe the state religion of the area between Tacoma and Olympia, Washington.
And Roswell?
Yeah. But Ramtha said, hello? Is it
me you're looking
me
for?
you're looking for? No, Ramtha said that he announced that he was here, and his first words to her were, "I'm here to help you over the ditch."
That's nice. That's a nice thing to hear.
And she was in the kitchen, so I'm not sure, and I think she's probably speculated what the ditch was.
Presumably it's a metaphorical
ditch. But Ramtha began to impart to her, a flood of insight and information about the workings of the world, and a lot of it taking the form of this sort of quantum philosophical, quasi-scientific. Like here is the truth that undergirds the truth,
the mechanism that makes the universe work.
That's right. And you ultimately, and the four main tenets of Ramtha. The first one is that you are God.
Me, Ken Jennings?
You, Ken Jennings, are God.
This philosophy is incredible. I love it already.
God is you. God is in you and in me.
I don't see why it appeals to other people.
God, I also am God.
Oh, I see.
And this is the problem, right? I mean, if we're all God, the first thing I would do if I were God was to prohibit you from being God.
I would also stop listening to Ramtha if I were God.
Right, exactly.
I don't need this guy anymore.
I am God. No, I am God. No, I am God. But you are God, and so you are a making being. There is no, you don't need to worship, you just need to find. Mm-hmm. The second thing is we need to make the known unknown. We make no. Wait a minute.
It's got to be the other way.
It's the other way around. We need to
this
make.
Religion's terrible.
Well, it was the syntax. You need to make known the unknown.
I see.
You don't need to make the known unknown. So if I were God, that's what I would do.
I'd make it.
The known unknown.
So it's a voyage of discovery and truth and wisdom.
Right. And also now, crucially, here we are. This is where Heisenberg is dancing on the head of a pin. Consciousness and energy create the nature of reality. Mm-hmm. So consciousness creates reality, and that's the thunderclap of this brand of metaphysics, right?
You can change things with
thought. With that, almost all subsequent New Age writers, kind of are, base their thinking around this notion.
Do you feel like this is fairly new, or is this like this evolved in a parallel sense in lots of New Age thinkers at once?
I think it coalesced here in this because
in this kitchen.
There are so many of the subsequent New Age writers that credit this initial kind of the inspiration that Judy Knight had in this kitchen with this paper triangle on her head. It reverberates throughout all of New Age writing and thinking.
So she popularizes the notion. That's fantastic.
And she immediately began holding...
that's only 3 tenets, I think.
Oh, and then the fourth is conquer yourself.
Ah, I see. That's a little Catholic.
Well... Sure, this is a synthesis, Ken, of all of the things.
It's not the Buddhists weren't right about everything.
No,
I guess the Buddhists also wanted to conquer themselves.
Well, and Ramtha is very dismissive of Christianity and organized religion and Buddhism. Ramtha's got a lot of strong feelings, as we'll discuss in a minute here. But she started to, and so she changed her name at a certain point to Judy Knight, and her middle name is Zebra.
What?
So her full name is Judy Zebra Knight or Jay-Z Knight. And Jay-Z, she did the classic pen name thing where she was like, well, maybe people won't take me seriously as a woman. Not that they won't take me seriously because I'm channeling a 30,000-year-old Lemurian god, but no.
She was Jay-Z before Jay-Z was Jay-Z?
Yeah, no, Jay-Z.
Before Beyonce ever had a Jay-Z night? There was already a Jay-Z night.
And I bet she wishes she could take some of those back.
That's crazy. Zebra seems like an odd, even if she wants to get to the Z, Zebra seems like an odd, it seems like she could have maybe spent a little longer on that.
Yeah.
It's like a writer's room who's like, all right, Zebra, let's get lunch in.
Judy Zebra Knight. There it is. I mean, you can't, who knows what inspired her. And it may have been the conversation she was having with this what would you say? Like,
it is prehistoric.
Ice Age demigod.
Well, let's talk about that. What is the historical milieu of Ramtha?
Okay. So Ramtha, so she starts doing encounters, happenings, having people in, but she's not just taking dictation. Ramtha comes into her bodily.
So she channels him.
And she loses consciousness herself, or she loses herself. And
if there's an audience, she could do it on demand.
Yeah.
That is the implication.
Well, or, she can't like command Ramtha, but he seems to, I mean, if she's on the Oprah show, he seems to want to show up.
He's amenable.
He like Merv Griffin's like, is Ramtha here? And she's like, let me find out. Ding dong.
It'd be a terrible show if he wasn't.
Hey, Ramtha, are you available? Brah, hello.
Think how disappointed Mike Douglas would be if Ramtha just is in the shower.
Yeah, that would be super embarrassing. That would be the type of thing you'd say for the Carson show, right? When the amazing Randy was on there. So Ramtha takes over, and in a voice that, I mean, again, I don't want to be too skeptical, but in a voice that sounds very much like if Judy Zebra Knight were just speaking a little bit deeper with a fake Indian accent, he directly imparts his knowledge and wisdom to an assembled audience, whoever they are. And at first, I think it's a couple of dozen people in her living room, and gradually she begins to kind of tour this act and amasses quite a extensive following.
She workshops it in Tacoma and then takes it on the road.
Some of the early people, I mean, Shirley MacLaine, very famously, is one of her early acolytes, Mike Farrell from the television show MASH.
BJ Honeycutt?
I'm afraid so.
He seems so down to earth.
The actor Richard Chamberlain.
He does not seem down to earth.
Linda Evans.
So she quickly gets show business connections, which I'm sure helps.
Now, interestingly,
was Shirley MacLaine already kind of new agey before this, or is this the origin of Shirley MacLaine discovering her past lives and so forth?
No, Shirley MacLaine had kind of dabbled in this throughout the 60s. She was an enormously popular actor of her time, an Academy Award winner, and was, caught up in the...
She didn't win the award yet. She won the award.
Oh, she won the award later. That's right. But
she had done movies with all these Rat Pack guys. And
yeah, her career started in the mid-50s. So she was already in this world and predisposed to it. And in fact, Shirley MacLaine also believed, or put another way, also channels a ancient Lemurian warrior who, weirdly, is Ramtha's brother.
Holy crap.
Shirley MacLaine.
I don't know how the population of ancient Lemuria, but the odds would seem to be staggeringly against that.
Pretty astonishing. And Shirley MacLaine has disavowed Jay-Z Knight and hasn't associated with her in over 30 years.
But continues to talk to the brother?
I believe continues to have the brother inhabit her. And I don't know if you...
Well, clearly the brother is still legitimate, but I cannot vouch for...
No, Jay-Z Knight's a real fraud. I don't know if you know this, but Warren Beatty is Shirley MacLaine's little brother.
Yes, she's Shirley Beatty.
Which means that Warren Beatty is like...
Is Ramtha's brother-in-law?
Ramtha's brother-in-law.
Wow, that's crazy. Can you imagine you go over to your you go over to a Super Bowl party at somebody's house or whatever, and like Warren Beatty is there because he's your brother-in-law.
Oh hey, I loved you in Hairspray.
Another fun fact about Shirley MacLaine: once pushed in front of my kids at a buffet line.
No kidding, but like pushed him out of the way.
Well, more like I'm tired of waiting. I see that the line is here, but I'm Shirley MacLaine.
Are you sure your kids weren't like taking too long picking a bread bowl out, and she was just like, there's a spot here.
It's possible she saw no, but it wasn't just like, oh, there's too many people are at the front end of the buffet. I'm going to sneak into the middle. I got to admit, I have done that.
Sure,
move.
who hasn't?
This was straight up. I'm tired of waiting for food. I'm cutting in front of kids. You got to give it to. Got to give it to Shirley MacLaine.
Well, she maybe had a different voice in her head. Ramtha's brother going like, brr, brr, brr.
Etiquette was presumably very different in Ice Age era Lemuria.
Well, so and I should explain what Ice Age era Lemuria is. In the 19th century, there was posited an idea trying to solve a problem, which was, why are there lemurs? And I'm talking about fossil remains of giant lemurs. Why are there lemurs in Madagascar, but not in India?
This is a problem that has never troubled me over much.
Why these lemurs and not those lemurs?
Of all the problems of the 19th century, slavery, no labor protections, they're worried about lemur population, lemur habitat.
The question is, why are there lemurs in India, lemur fossils in India and in Madagascar,
where there are still lemurs,
but no ancient lemur fossils in Africa, right next to Madagascar, or the Middle East, which is in between India and Madagascar? So how are there giant lemurs hither and thither, but not thus and such?
But not yon.
And
this has not troubled me over much, I have to say.
Well, but you were not a 19th century zoologist and geologist.
Surely there were bigger problems to solve in the 19th century. There's still slavery and immigrant workers dying in factory fires.
Yes, but we're trying at this point in the mid 19th century, using all of the powers that God has given us, sailing around the world in creaky ships, trying to understand what it's all about. And this was before the notion of continental drift, before continental drift had entered into the scientific canon. And now we understand, these animal populations are...
The continents were not always...
Yeah, they're not where they aren't what they seem. But the proposal in trying to explain this...
the lemur problem.
The lemur gambit. A zoologist by the name of Philip Sclotter proposed an ancient continent now subsumed beneath the oceans.
An Atlantis-style continent in the Indian Ocean.
In the Indian Ocean, named Lemuria, because of
all the lemurs who populated it and used it as a kind of a causeway between their two favorite hangouts, Madagascar and India.
Yeah, that's Got it. So, and the lemurs, and I'm sure they were a mound building culture.
That would be a heck of that's a long continent.
It's a long continent. Right. Well, but they were the lemurs must have been seafaring lemurs also.
And it has humans if Ramtha is hanging out there with his brother and presumably Warren Beatty.
Well, so this is the thing. 30,000 years ago, I mean, this is prehistory. There was, I mean, you and I have done many episodes of this show on various things suggesting that 30,000 years ago there was not a ton of like global culture sharing.
True.
Not there weren't a lot of seafaring people that crossed the oceans, or at least not that we've seen a ton of evidence for. But Ramtha claimed to be a great leader of his time. He led an enormous army of 2.5 million Lemurians.
That would be enormous.
It was enormous, especially since that greatly exceeds the entire world population estimated of 30,000 years
Which just
ago.
shows you what an inspiring military commander is.
Well, that's the thing. He would have He was twice.
He's so good that he can.
His army is twice as big as the entire world's population.
That's pretty good.
He fought an epic battle against the Atlanteans, who also
Shouldn't they be like in a different ocean?
Well-
Did they have to cross Africa?
Lemurian culture, we'll see later on, actually also was in the area around Tacoma, Washington.
Oh,
So
interesting.
Lemurian culture spanned the globe. Anyway, Ramtha was a great leader. He was, at some point, although a great leader, like a lot of great leaders, was speared in battle, but didn't die, sat on a rock and thought about the nature of life.
He's not a guru yet. It's after his.
That's right.
It's after his retirement.
He spends
His honorable discharge from the Lemurian army
I think he spends 7 years
on this rock,
sitting on a rock, thinking about stuff.
whacking the lemurs that are constantly poking and prodding at him.
Maybe when he talks about his army of 2.5 million
Yeah,
people,
exactly.
like 1.5 million of those were lemurs.
All the enlisted are lemurs. Corporal lemur, corporal other lemur, and so forth.
He and this is the thing. He led this army for 63 years. And then when he was in his late 50s, stopped leading the army. These are some of the hilarious inconsistencies in Ramtha's story that have been compiled by later doubters, skeptics.
He started very young.
He started several years before he was born, leading the army. But in his late 50s, he sat down on the rock. He thought about it for a long time. And then at the end of his army all dispersed. They all became farmers and great lovers. At the end of his long meditation, he stood up and for 120 days taught all that he had learned in his rock sitting time, and then ascended in a flash of light directly to heaven. As we've discussed, that's basically de rigueur if you're going to be one of the gods.
And whatever heaven is, it's some afterlife plane from which he can communicate with Jay-Z.
Right, and he said very specifically as he left, I will be back to share even more. I'll be back with more stuff right after these messages.
Don't go away. I'll be in Tacoma.
He said he'd be back. I'll be back. And he didn't. So 120 days wasn't enough time, but he would come back. And when he showed up under the paper pyramid in Jay-Z Knight's living room or kitchen, this was his return. He had come back to share all he had learned.
He sure skipped a lot of time.
He did. And it's unclear why after 32,000 years, or I'm sorry, 31,977 years, that he chose this moment and this. And I think it was the pyramid, basically. It tapped into some...
Nobody had made the right shaped pyramid yet.
Right, or put it on their head. Jay-Z Knight became
what if Devo
had done instead of a circle.
First, yeah.
Oh, maybe Bougie Boy is also a Lemurian god.
That would explain a lot.
So Jay-Z Knight becomes a very popular and charismatic medium. Ramtha is giving these talks. She appears on the Mike Douglas show. She becomes a
people are laughing at
media
her.
Personality.
People are laughing at her.
Well, a lot of people are laughing at her, but as we've seen, all religions have a certain number of people that are like, you know what, that sounds actually pretty good. And most of the followers of Ramtha tend to be fairly well-educated, fairly politically liberal, culturally attuned people. Ramtha does not appeal to what we would think of as super gullible people because of this metaphysics, the New Age thinking, the belief. I mean, it is a complicated set of beliefs.
It may also be a fact that Ramtha has reemerged in a country in which religious devotion now correlates with low levels of education and maybe socioeconomic success, unfortunately.
Traditional religion.
Yeah. Like the what I'm saying is, the less educated or more conservative elements are perfectly happy with their religious situation, and they are not seeking for Ramtha.
Seeking a new...
in the way that some dentist from Federal Way might be.
And the the doctrine that you are God and that you can create your own reality with your mind bullets. But also, Jay-Z Knight is a strong female lead, and I think this is at a time when you could still speak in a slightly Hank Azaria accent, and people would not blanch at it.
Does the movement attract women because it's so rare to find a female spiritual leader in 1970s era America?
I think it's a pretty diverse cast of people that show up. I mean, what she does, she ends up deciding that rather than do the Ramtha touring show, that she's going to build a campus for herself. And she finds
smart, like Celine Dion.
That's right.
You don't have to tour anymore.
That's right. You just do your show every night at the Bellagio. She, I guess, found something really to love in the Tacoma area and went out to a little town in Washington, situated kind of equidistant from Olympia and Tacoma, a town called Yelm.
You've probably been to Yelm.
I've been to Yelm many times. I've looked over the fence to Ramtha's School of Enlightenment many times.
So what's the vibe? Is it just like her house, or is there like a campus?
No, it's an enormous campus. It's built in the style of a French chateau. The campus has a huge kind of wall all around it. It's forested. Yelm is largely forested environment. I mean, it's a town of 7,000 or 8,000 people, and the School of Enlightenment.
It's the biggest employer.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are 2,000 people there, or living in the town who are associated with it. And she started doing big events. People could live there. She started videotaping Ramtha's words, great seances. And Ramtha had stuff to say about everything. And Ramtha's, Ramtha knows a lot about some stuff. Ramtha also,
Well, he's from 30,000-year-old Lemuria. He's going to have a hard time answering questions about like car maintenance.
Well, yes and no. I mean, Ramtha often would do things like, somebody would hand Jay-Z Knight a pen and Ramtha would go, "What is this thing? Whoa, is crazy pen." I don't know why he's suddenly speaking Yiddish.
Is he Tevye?
But then also Ramtha really knows a lot about, media and
interesting
magazines.
He's got thoughts on the modern situation.
He does. And Ramtha also...
He would have to, I guess. If he stops saying things, people are going to stop coming to Yelm, and then how do you pay the rent on your chateau?
Yeah, Ramtha can't just say, "And that is my wisdom, thank you." Ramtha also very good at protecting his own intellectual property. A woman in Austria by the name of Julie Ravel claimed that she was also channeling Ramtha.
Ramtha, you scamp.
And so she was sued. Ramtha couldn't appear in court, so Judy Zebra Knight sued on his behalf, and the court decided that Julie Ravel was not channeling Ramtha, and so had to pay $800 in damages.
Is that a finding of fact? I wonder on what basis the court can decide.
Yeah, weird. There was another a woman in Thurston County, Washington, by the name of White Wind Weaver, also was getting messages from Ramtha, also sued by Jay-Z Knight.
That could just because she lived nearby, like the same way maybe you get your neighbors Cinemax or Stars.
Well, it turns out you can channel his brother. I don't know why you would, there are a lot of Ramtha associates you could be talking to. Anyway, so Jay-Z Knight built an enormous empire, and you don't get the sense that she's become a billionaire from this sort of metaphysical...
She's got a nice chateau, but it's in Yelm.
She's got a chateau, but it's in Yelm. And the people of Yelm Yelm is a little Washington cow town.
Is there an Antelope, Oregon thing going on where they're they don't like the The mystical interlopers?
You can spend a day in Yelm, which I've done several times, and not be aware of Ramtha's School of Enlightenment. Although it's right there. I mean, it's right in the center of town, basically. It's behind a big wall, and then there are a bunch of trees, and so it's not, there's no billboard
Until
for
you
it.
put a pyramid on your head, you might not even sense it.
But, it's Yelm. There's a pizza parlor. There's a big box store. They have a nice water tower. Yelm is one of those towns where in order to get to the other side of Yelm, you have to go up to the main stoplight and turn left. So everybody that's going south has to wait at this freaking stoplight. And it didn't used to be a traffic jam. It was just a little town. You drive in, you turn left at the stoplight. But now it's like Winnebago's backed up. You have to, it's 20 minutes to get through
Yelm regrets
Yeah.
the right angle.
Right. And they should have built a bypass around it a long time ago, but at the time, I bet they wanted people to come in and have lunch at the diner.
Breezewood.
But Ramtha takes a lot of, became a powerful person in the local community of Thurston County. Ramtha was against them building a NASCAR track. Out in Yelm. There were some city boosters that were like, we could bring NASCAR here and it'd be a real, bring a lot of money to the local economy.
Ramtha sat on a rock and considered it.
Was not about that at all. Ramtha, although J.Z. Knight herself is a Democrat and
registered
Democrat, donates to and has given a lot of money to Democratic politicians, both nationally and locally, Ramtha is an anti-Semite and a maybe Nazi sympathizer.
Wait, I guess you could say, well, he's a product of this time, but the whole idea of Ramtha is that he is the most enlightened speaker on the planet, or else why are you paying the big bucks for his School of Enlightenment? And yet what he's saying white supremacist stuff?
Ramtha, one of the things that, and sort of like Scientology, you don't get to hear this stuff until you're pretty into the game. But Ramtha wants you to know that that a group of people control all the banks and the media, and that group of people is known as the Graymen.
Gray, like gray men?
The Graymen.
Graymen.
Or the Graymen.
Graymen. And
the Graymen control the media and the banks. And if it wasn't clear enough,
what modern group corresponds to
who the Graymen are, Ramtha said explicitly that the Graymen have accumulated enough money that they should have been able to buy their way out of the Holocaust.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That seems like the kind of thing Ramtha should just stay out of.
And I don't know why Ramtha has anything to say about it. Ramtha's got a lot to say about Mexican Americans. And Ramtha's kind of an asshole.
The psychodynamics of this are interesting.
Yeah, because
if we posit that perhaps Ramtha is just part of the unconscious mind of Judy Knight, then she's either bearing herself in the part or she has a deeply conflicted part of herself that is not at peace with her liberal ideology.
So this became an issue in Washington state politics because
Ramtha ran for the Senate.
No, J.Z. Knight had given $70,000 to Washington state Democratic Party. And then Ramtha had all this stuff to say about Mexican immigration and how the Graymen should have bought their way out of the apocalypse. And so the Washington State Democratic Party took her $70,000 donation and gave it to the Anti-Defamation League, or spent the money,
safe,
took it away. Now, interestingly, J.Z. Knight continues to give money. She gave money to to Barack Obama, and she continues to give money to the Washington State Democratic Party. And I'm not sure that they continue to fail to accept her donations.
Once it was in the news, they did it, but maybe now it's less urgent.
But Ramtha himself came out as a Donald Trump supporter during the Trump years. and at one point said to an assembled group that when Donald Trump first, this is right after his election, when he first goes up in his Air Force One, he's going to look out the window and see that his plane is being escorted by UFOs. I didn't mention the UFO connection, and
we'll take it as read.
Take it as read. The UFOs are going to be, giving him a kind of escort.
That's
and
nice.
And looking out the window and seeing the craft, he will. This is Ramtha. Trump will suddenly know everything. It will all be revealed as he looks out and says, "Oh, I have an escort of UFOs."
It checks out because I do not know everything, and I have often looked out an airplane window and not seen a flotilla of UFOs.
Right. And from Trump's behavior, you can tell that he does know something the rest of us don't.
So, do you think that happened? Did he see the UFOs? Ramtha has not. Ramtha has not provided a follow-up.
I think right now Ramtha is silent on the question of whether or not the Democrats are eating babies in pizza parlors in suburban Virginia.
Ramtha waits till his party is in power to make these proclamations, I guess.
So today, if you and I got in the car, we could be in Yelm in an hour and a half.
Should we do it?
And we could show up there. I think for $450, we could take a intro to Ramtha class. I don't think Jay-Z Knight appears and gives. I don't think we could just waltz in and sit at her feet.
You get videos and
yeah,
booklets.
Yeah, I think she's in a different part of the campus. But
do the teachings include Ramtha's suspect politics?
Well, she claims when confronted that all of that's taken out of context and that Ramtha, that there apparently is some context into which
what
gray men controlling the media.
What question leads to, and then President Trump will look out Air Force One and see the UFOs and will achieve enlightenment. I mean, it's hard to imagine how you would frame that differently.
Yeah, you have to wonder. I mean, if you are going to have a relationship with your marionette, if you're the marionette, why you wouldn't have them if the person that you're channeling doesn't share your own opinions, why wouldn't they have more outlandish opinions and not more prosaic ones?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's the same reason why all spirit guides tend to be prominent 30,000-year-old warriors, and none of them are just like peasants or died in childbirth or whatever a more common outcome would have been. It's a mark in Ramtha's favor that he's saying all these unpopular things, because surely a charlatan would not, if Ramtha were spurious, you would not make up these outrageous conspiracy theories. You would have Ramtha say flattering and plausible things.
Well, yeah, but she's not on the Mike Douglas show anymore. She's in Yelm, Washington, where the political tone is probably somewhere in between vax denialism and, I mean, not to besmirch the great Yelm, Washington, but she's
still bringing in a crowd of out-of-towners, most of whom are, if they're new agey types, they're not expecting to hear probably MAGA slogans.
Well, I mean, she's got to go to Lowe's to get pulls, like drawer pulls for the kitchen too. So she's encountering a lot more people in Yelm than she is on Broadway. It's hard to tell. I mean, she, although I am keeping an open mind, I also did not, in my research, find very much in the teachings of Ramtha that I felt like I needed to bring into my own life or understanding of quantum metaphysics. I do believe I'm God, but in a very different way.
Well, the problem is there's no shortage of people now to tell you you're God.
Right.
If there's only one option and it's a 35,000-year-old warrior, then you got to go there. But I mean,
sure. I mean,
you could stick with Seth. You could go with Ramtha's brother.
I mean, P. Diddy will tell me I'm God.
And that concludes Ramtha, entry 1029.AC1616, certificate number 27324 in the omnibus. Now, futurelings, you cannot contact us on the astral plane. We, for one thing, we never accumulated enough wisdom to pass it along to future millennia. But you can find our ghosts, as it were, still rapping on tables on social media from the early 21st century. I'm at Ken Jennings. John is at John Roderick. You'll mostly see him on his Patreon of the same name. Omnibus Project, jointly everywhere. There were fellow Omnibus listeners. If you yearn for the parasocial, if you want to deepen the parasocial experience of podcast listening, you want to branch out to a broader parabola of people, you can do that at the Futurelings groups on Facebook and elsewhere. You could email us at theomnibusproject@gmail.com if you have questions or complaints. I mean, we read the questions, we delete the complaints.
Do not complain to us.
Is that the Ramtha voice?
No, I am not Ramtha. I am Ramtha's cousin.
Ramtha was like Topple a second ago.
Ramtha's cousin. My name is...
I'm Ramtha's no good cousin.
Queequeg.
Is Ramtha's cousin like a Billy Carter type? Who's just a screw up?
I'm Ramtha's cousin, and
I never joined the army. I never sat on no rock.
Tell you what, them Graymen are taking all my raspberry beer.
Maybe the Roger Clinton type would actually be pro Grayman. You know, he's not.
Right.
I mean, Ramtha's apparently well educated and enlightened, but.
Oh, sure. His ne'er-do-well brother-in-law will be like, well, I think the Graymen are kind of great.
All men are brothers, in my opinion.
I mean, I love Hollywood. It's interesting that if you believe Ramtha, that the Jewish culture is 35,000 years old too.
Well, presumably, maybe this is something that occurred to him when he reemerged in modern life.
Oh, I see. And he's like, whoa, what's happened here?
We used to just have two kinds of people, Lemurians and lemurs. And now...
Oh, no, there were Atlanteans.
Oh, there had to be Atlanteans, too.
You got to have somebody to fight.
Or I guess maybe the gray man is a cross-chronological concept that now manifests itself in a particular people. But.
Well, what's interesting is that UFOs are also present in this story, also sometimes mistakenly called the Gray Men.
Oh.
So what are we even talking about now?
Does Ramtha use the term grays to refer to aliens also, or is that's just general UFO speak?
I think that's general UFO speak. I don't think Ramtha coined grays.
I love the idea that maybe a UFO cult will be built around the idea that the aliens are all Jewish.
I'm going to have to recuse myself from that theory until I do more research.
Okay. Yeah, really, there's nothing we can say at this point that would be good to have on paper.
No.
In addition to emails, you can send us physical objects to our mailbox, P.O. Box 55744, Shoreline, Washington, 98155. I'm looking at a variety of postcards here. Kathy sent us a Donner Party related monument.
Oh, that's sweet.
Presumably from a visit to the Sierras.
I'm glad that the Donner Party has become another fan touchstone with us.
What an honor to be associated with something as successful and beloved as the Donner Party.
Look at this Donner Party card. I'm going to send it to Ken and John.
This isn't signed, so I can't tell who sent this to us, but the two different postcards sent to us from Battle Creek, Michigan, the headquarters of the Kellogg Company. The one to me, I read first, and it says, I wrote the message on the card I sent to John. So hi, I guess. So
okay.
So CF the other card. Found these at the Battle Creek History Museum. They quit doing tours in the 90s. If you show up for a tour now, you will be escorted off the Kellogg's premises by security.
Bummer.
So that's a warning, both to present and future listeners. Do not attempt to tour the Cornflakes factory.
Well, what's crazy is that they used to offer tours. Like, what happened?
Yeah, Tony the Tiger, devoured several Californian tourists.
Yeah, or did some tourists come in and start throwing feces around and they had to shut it down?
It was me wearing my Chex Mix t-shirt, and they were like, nope. And then we got this note from Jake and Maggie, who have been listening to Omnibus while they're driving the ring road of Iceland. They saw an Usik at the... did you know Reykjavik has a
Usyk Museum?
It has a penis-themed museum.
Oh.
Are you aware?
No, I didn't know that. Have you been there?
I've eaten at the beloved hot dog cart
Oh, you were gonna
nearby.
say I ate there. But you ate at the hot dog cart
Yeah,
there.
I think it's not a coincidence that
Okay.
the famous hot dog cart in town is not far from the Phallological Museum. Phallonological. This is a postcard from Husavik, which I believe is the Icelandic town in the in that Will Ferrell Eurovision movie. Thank you for sending us a note from Iceland, Jake and Maggie. You also received a birthday card from Dawn. I don't know if you ever... Dawn's in the mode of a beloved grandparent is sending you
$20.
a little cash on your birthday. So happy birthday from President Jackson.
Hey, thank you,
But also,
Dawn.
I wanted to open this on the show because it comes with a very omnibus gift, an old Rand McNally disto map. Have you ever seen one of these?
I have a vague recollection of them. Explain how it works.
There's I don't know if I can explain this on the air, but there's a Brad holding a rotating circle in between two cardboard maps.
Right.
So as you rotate the circle, you pick the city of your destination at the top. Let's say I want to go to El Paso. And now all the different holes on the map will line up to show me the mileage from El Paso to all these cities.
Oh, how cool.
So from Santa Fe, 320 miles. Let's say I want to go from Santa Fe to Corpus Christi. Oh, now it's 868 miles because Texas is big.
Oh, Texas always seems so big, but
Let's say I want to
you're in
travel
the largest state of the union.
from Tacoma to Butte.
All right.
Can I get from Tacoma to Roswell? Oh, I can. Okay, from Tacoma to Roswell, that's 1,711 miles traveled by Ramtha.
This is really a tool that you would use on your Route 66 road trip.
It's exactly what you would use. Although Road Atlas has also had the little chart where you could always...
Yeah, but it says right here, Ken, a new concept in travel planning. Do you know what typeface that is?
I love that typeface. No, I don't. But it's straight off of a PBS brought to you by the Ford Foundation graphic from 1978. This is for people who don't like those little mileage charts in Road Atlases and want a new method. I like how the back also shows you different signs. Have you seen that? If a sign that is red and says "Do not enter," what does that mean?
Do not enter.
Interesting.
If it's a triangle that says yield,
what do you do then?
Yield.
That is very helpful. You don't want to go on a road trip without knowledge like that.
If there's a truck and it's got the international symbol for no through it,
that means lots of trucks.
Means no trucks.
Interesting. See, you need a new kind of disto map.
Oh, this one up here that says no passing zone?
Yeah, what does that mean?
No passing
The
zone.
interesting thing is that it labels all these as, am I right? New U.S. road markers?
New U.S. road markers. So there must have been a transition that happened in the late 60s, early 70s.
Is there a date there? When is that published? I'm going to go mid 70s on that book. Am I wrong?
I think with the typeface as it is, it would be hard for this not to be early to mid 70s, but I don't see a date. We should do what's this back here? We should do some research on...
I wonder what no left turn signs looked like, because apparently it was not a red slash through an arrow turning left.
From Birmingham to Albuquerque.
Interesting.
Only 1,262 miles.
Let's do another hour of this show where I try to guess distances, and we see you rotate the little thing.
You say that, and our audience is kind of laughing, but also that there's nothing that would make either of us any happier than playing that game.
And there's a chunk of the audience that would be like, "Are they really going to do that?"
We should do a special episode where you and I just each have an atlas and we try and stump the other one. How many rivers are there in Oklahoma?
Oh, what a great show that would be. Did I say all the things? Oh, no, the Patreon. You can, of course, support the show by sending us bizarre Rand McNally atlases in the 70s.
And this may be one of the perks.
Or you can go to patreon.com/omnibus project. And, John and I need a French chateau in Yelm.
Yeah.
Yes,
Queen.
Putting long, meandering conversations on gold records and burying them in the earth is not a revenue neutral proposition. So we appreciate your support and generosity. There are amazing perks available, including a monthly addenda show, and it just gets better from there. So if you have considered supporting the Omnibus before,
Yeah, we're about to record our monthly addenda show right after we finish this episode.
The interesting thing is we're about to record the addenda show you heard 3 weeks ago.
Right.
If you're a donor. So enjoy that little bit of time travel.
So if you're not a donor, join as a patron and then travel back in time.
3 weeks and hear what we're about to say next. It'll probably be a lot about road mileages.
Road mileage. I have a fresh $20 bill here.
Boy,
lots to talk about.
Burning a hole in your pocket.
Futurelings, from our vantage point in your distant past, which is to say, we are the voice from 30,000 years ago, talking to you about the Lemurians that we face every day, the Atlanteans we fight.
We got to get across the ditch in our lives.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to the ditch? Did she ever figure out what it was?
I think she's still getting across the ditch.
We're all just trying to get across that ditch.
You know, the Futurelings may have some equivalent to a paper pyramid that they put on their heads, and all of a sudden the voices of Ken and John appeared. And
a flotilla of UFOs appeared to
guide
bear
their way.
them across the ditch into the future.
Well, we hope and pray that whatever catastrophe it is that we fear does not come to pass, at least in our lifetimes or our children's lifetimes, although, as we've said before, our great-grandchildren are on their own.
What if our continent sinks and people are like,
how did these Nike tennis shoes get from China all the way over to Paris, France?
There must have been a continent in the middle, which we will call Sneak Area.
If the worst comes soon, which is, I think most recently, the eruption on La Palma of the giant volcano that's going to trigger the mega tsunami, the now discredited mega tsunami that's going to wipe the East Coast.
Even if it's discredited, I'm pretty happy to be on the West Coast for a change.
You are you looking at the Canary Islands with trepidation?
I just want to be on the coast furthest from the Canary Islands, just in case.
This recording, like all our recordings, may have been our final word. But if Providence allows, we hope to be back with you soon for another entry in the Omnibus.